Good morning, good morning. Thank you so much for joining me. This is the podcast, The Endurance of Labor Laws. I'm your lovely host, Lesley Sullivan, and today is episode 147. And today we're going to take a look at the National Nurses United. This is a labor union in the United States, and it's a very interesting one as well as kind of disturbing to me. But first of all, let me give a big shout out to my listeners. So as usual, a big shout out to California, Texas, New York, Oklahoma, Massachusetts, Colorado, Washington, and Nevada in terms of countries, the United States, the United Kingdom, and the Russian Federation. So a little bit of housekeeping here. The month of September, there are a couple different things that people celebrate and there are awarenesses of, so I'm just going to read through these because these are kind of interesting. So the month of September is National Blood Cancer Awareness Month. So hence, you should be getting a physical checkup every year. That means a wellness visit. That means for a woman, you will get a pap smear done, a breast exam. If you're over the age of 40, it's either over the age of 40 or 35, you get a yearly mammogram. So what I've noticed is that sometimes doctors, they claim it's a wellness visit, but yet they don't do a pelvic exam, they don't do a pap smear, they don't do a mammogram or a breast exam. If you're just going in to a visit and it's, quote, a wellness exam and they're not doing any kind of examination on you or any kind of blood work, then it's not an examination. It's not a wellness check. It's just them, making money off of you just to talk or shoot the breeze, so to speak. And also a wellness exam should be conducted by a registered physician, meaning an MD or a DO, not a registered nurse or a physician assistant because they're not as trained. If you need a wellness exam and you're a woman, you need to see an OBGYN, like someone that specifically studied and continues to study the female anatomy. So you need to make sure that you go to someone that specializes in that. Also, if you are a gentleman, you need to go to a doctor that specializes in the prostate and things of that nature and also will run blood work for you, especially for cholesterol and things of that nature. So if you're a guy, once you reach the age of 18, and this is also the same for women, you should be getting a yearly exam every year. And if you're over the age, I think it's 40, you should be getting a colonoscopy every 5 to 10 years, and that's for both men and women. So FYI, be aware of that because almost all diseases can be caught early and treated early. So, do be aware of that and go to a specialist. Don't just go to someone generic that's not as educated. You really need to see the best of the best, right? Because your life matters. So, another thing that is, I guess, awareness, so to speak, in the month of September is National Disease Literacy Month. I don't know what that means because they're not even teaching our kids how to write anymore. Like penmanship is out the window. A lot of people, I think, age 20 and younger or maybe age 25 and younger, it's like they don't even know how to write their name. Everything is done on the computer, and that's how they were raised, so that affects their literacy. So maybe they should think about that in schools. Another thing that is kind of celebrated in the month of September is National Square Dance Month. So definitely a good way to burn calories, and it's super fun. Now moving on to some other things that are somewhat celebrated in the month of September, or awareness, I should say. See here it says National Farm Animals Awareness Week. So interesting there. And we are in the third week of September, just double checking that, looking at the calendar here. So the other thing is National Farm Safety and Health Week. That's actually really good. I'm glad to see that someone has kind of specialized in that and is making it aware of this. So it's one of those things that there are so many chemicals that are used, and again, I'm not against this, but there's so many chemicals that are used in the farming industry as well as in the pesticide industry. And it's very dangerous for people to be exposed to those chemicals. So that's one reason why I think it's really good that they have a National Farm Safety and Health Week, as well as, specializing in, equipment that is safe for farming, because we have a tremendous amount of farming, sometimes too much farming that's done here in the United States. And you might be thinking, well, Lesley, how is there too much farming? Well, one of the things that we overfarm is corn. So unfortunately, corn farmers, they're sometimes and usually paid through a subsidy from the federal government to farm corn. And some of that is put into our fuel. So that's why, we have fuel that you put in your car that maybe has 10%, I think it's ethanol, if I remember correctly. I'm probably not pronouncing that word correctly, but, fuel used to never have a byproduct of corn in it, and our fuel was a lot better because it was pure. But unfortunately, there are lobbyists that are hired by these different farming companies and individuals, and they get Congress and the federal government to go along with their scheme of give us money, money, money to farm, farm, farm. It's like, well, if you're over farming, then you're really not helping our society. So just be aware of that. The next one that is celebrated in the third week of September is National Rehabilitation Awareness Week. I think that's really good to have that because there are so many people that are not getting the proper medical care that they need. One thing I've noticed is that insurance companies and sometimes doctors, they are not for physical therapy. So, for example, if you've been in a car wreck or maybe you've had a stroke or maybe you're trying to recover from a really serious illness, sometimes it's very difficult to get physical therapy and rehabilitation services covered by insurance or even just get a doctor to believe you, which is absolutely stupid. I just don't understand those things. But it's one of those things that's very disappointing to me because I think that if you really care about someone, you would want them to have the best possible health care. And that does not mean single-payer system or universal health care because, as we have discussed in times past, socialized medicine sucks. It does not help as many people as you think. The only thing that socialized medicine wants to pay for is basically birth control and antibiotics. Well, anything outside of that, they really don't want to pay for. But you'd be surprised how many healthcare professionals are all for socialized medicine. And if anything, it takes the decision-making out of the hands of the patient and it puts it into the hands of the elitists in this country that are medical professionals and also our government. When in fact, a patient's health care belongs to the patient. It doesn't belong to the doctor. It doesn't belong to the state. It doesn't belong to the federal government. And it does not belong to nurses. It does not belong to medical assistants. It does not belong to physician assistants. It belongs to the patient. So it's one of those things like sometimes doctors get really pissed off at patients because the patient's like, well, I don't really like what you're recommending. Can we do something else? Sometimes doctors will get really angry at patients because they think, oh, well, are you just trying to buy a service? Well, technically, yes, but also they're just trying to get a better healthcare service. You'll get a better healthcare provider possibly. I mean, there are some doctors that, or even nurses as well. So let me just say medical professionals. If you go against their opinion or you don't agree with their opinion, they get super pissed off sometimes. And they think, well, are you just trying to pay for what you get? Well, that's just a natural consequence of you going to see a doctor because healthcare is not free. Even in socialized medicine, it's not free. Unfortunately, in socialized medicine, it comes from your taxes, which means all of our taxes will be very high. It's not just on the rich. So, needless to say, if our taxes go really high and we have socialized medicine, the middle class will shrink, more middle class people will go into the lower income bracket, we will have more poverty, and the rich will not always get richer. If anything, a lot of rich people will then be bumped down to middle class because they were overtaxed. So that's why when you overtax people, regardless of what income bracket they are in, it's wrong to do so. So just be aware of that. So in terms of things that are also brought attention to, like on specific days, we are a little bit behind on this. So on September 10th, it was World Suicide Prevention Day. I've mentioned this in times past that I think it's very hypocritical to have assisted suicide, but then also try and have suicide awareness or suicide prevention, because I've always thought, okay, well, if someone's thinking about suicide and they call in on a suicide hotline, does the person that pick up the phone say to the person, oh, you're thinking about suicide? What a great decision. Here is a assisted suicide facility located in the state of Washington or Seattle or wherever, or Oregon. And, you know, if you want to kill yourself or have someone help you die, that's great. That's a wonderful humanistic decision. We want to help you with that decision. Let us pay for your jet to go there. See, here's the thing. If suicide is wrong, and I don't mean religiously speaking per se, I just mean like if it's wrong to kill yourself, and we have this suicide hotlines, we have suicide prevention, we have medical, healthcare professionals that, you know, they're counselors and things like that. Whenever someone is talking about killing themselves, they're supposed to be admitted to the psychiatric ward, you know, go to the hospital. Well, if suicide is considered an option, then why is it considered something that you're not supposed to do? So if it's something that you're not supposed to do, then why do we have assisted suicide in the United States and also in Europe? It's not right. So just want to bring that to mind. Also on September 10th, it was World First Aid Day. Kind of interesting there. So just FYI, be aware that if you do have a cut or a wound, you do need to disinfect it appropriately. And if it's really bad, you do need to go to the ER. I do know that back in the day when I was younger, mind you, I'm speaking from someone that was raised in Oklahoma. There's some people that thought that, well, if you get stung by a bee or if you get stung by an insect, you should just make mud out of dirt, mix it with water, and put it on the wound. Well, thanks a lot. You just put a lot of bacteria into the wound. And that could actually kill a person. So just be aware that just because there are old wives' tales and there's, the so-called old-fashioned way of doing things, it actually may kill you, and it may actually cost you an arm or a leg. You might get staph infection. So just be aware of that. It doesn't pay to be ignorant. Then we have September 11. So September 11 obviously was a really tough day years and years ago when the United States was attacked by terrorists. I just want to mention this, that that easily could have been prevented. Easily. But unfortunately, we allowed some really bad people into the United States, very foolishly, and there were a lot of safeguards that were not implemented, and people did not speak up. So it's one of those things that if you see something, you need to say something. Even if it is anonymously, you do need to speak up and say something, because that totally could have been prevented. It had been in the works for a long time, actually, because if you think about it, to pull off something as horrific and as organized as what happened to the United States on September 11, that took a long time to plan. So, and here's another thing. I guarantee you it wasn't just the terrorists that were aware of that plan. I guarantee you there were other nations, other peoples that were involved, maybe people that we will never know about. So just be aware that there are many nations and many groups of people that hate the United States, like they want us dead. So please don't be foolish, and also don't be terrified or scared, but just be aware that the United States does have enemies. And we are a world superpower, and unfortunately we are the policemen of the world, because we believe in freedom and democracy, and we believe in our Heavenly Father. We believe in, Christianity. We don't believe in paganism. We don't believe in the Muslim religion, because even though we do honor other religions here in the United States, we know that some of these other religions are actually very terrifying, and they're very inhumane, and they have a lot of human rights violations. So even though we do have freedom of religion and freedom of speech here in the United States, that doesn't mean that we should look the other way whenever there are people that practice something that is very harmful to themselves and to other people. So just be aware of that. So then I'm going to go through some of the things that are celebrated or emphasized on September 12th. So this says here, United Nations Day for South Corporation or Cooperation, whatever word they're trying to use there. So I'm not really sure what I think about the United Nations. I think sometimes they get things right and other times they get things wrong. I also think that sometimes the United Nations and or NATO, they use the United States for money, just like some of these international labor unions, and trade unions. And I think that's a huge mistake that we fall sucker to that, just because we are not the world's personal piggy bank. People need to be responsible for themselves as much as possible. And I think there are a lot of people and a lot of nations that need to grow up and suck it up. And I don't mean that harshly. I'm just saying that the United States gets used a lot for our currency, our land, and our resources. And it's high time that people paid us for that stuff. Because things cost money. And, our resources, the planet is not limited, but when you keep using the same source over and over again, it's very likely that you will deplete it. So it's one of those things that, again, we are not the world's piggy bank, and our resources belong to us first, not the rest of the planet. So just be aware of that. And for some reason, September 12th is a day of the programmer. I guess that means in regards to computer technology, but I think it's one of those things, I don't meet very many programmers that are actually very kind or polite. So, maybe they could go to charm school and be kind to people. That's just one of those things that with IT, sometimes those people are not known for their mannerisms. And there's a reason why they work with machines and not necessarily people. It's because they lack those interpersonal skills. So maybe we should lift up some prayers that they develop those interpersonal skills and get better at their job and get better at living in society, wherever they live, because, it's one of those things, I always find it interesting whenever someone says, oh, I'm not a people person or I'm shy, but yet if they were to meet Brad Pitt or Angelina Jolie, I mean, they would just drool. I mean, you know what I mean? It's just like, I think whenever these people claim they're shy or timid or they're not a people person, I'm like, oh really? Well, which people are you referring to? You know, I think it's very hypocritical because I've actually seen shy people. This irritates me to no end. But it's so frustrating because they'll pretend and they live this lie that they're shy and or they don't like people. But then when someone that they really want to meet walks in the room, they're like, oh, I've always wanted to meet you. Then they're human. Then they're nice. Then they're kind. So it's such a lie. So just be aware that there's so many introverts and shy people that are liars. They just use the situation to their advantage, and they have found the excuse of like a personality disorder to try and get away with whatever they want. So feel free to call those people out on it, because I've actually seen someone like just be totally two-faced. They totally lied and said they're shy and they pretend to be timid, but then when some hot guy walks in, the girl's all over him like some skank or some prostitute. And then when it's a guy, they're claiming to be shy or whatever. Then when some hot chick walks in, you know, like with a huge rack and is a blonde or something for like California, oh, they're all over them. It's like, really? So where's your shyness now, bro? Like, it's so fake. Because typically when someone is truly introverted or they're truly shy, they don't change like that. They don't all of a sudden become extrovert. So that tells me that they're living a lie. So a lot of those people are liars, and I don't mean that harshly, but it just is what it is. I've seen it firsthand. I've seen it in the office. I've seen it at church. I've seen it out and about. You know, when I am involved with my friends and we go out, you know, basically to volunteer somewhere or something like that. And I'm just like, wow, you see a lot of human behavior. So FYI, just be aware that sometimes shy people are not these sweet, innocent little geeks that they claim to be. You know, just because they wear those geeky glasses that, you know, maybe they're not even real lenses, you know what I mean? Like, there are some people that they wear fake glasses just to look intelligent and smart. I mean, what a lie. I mean, really, like, there are so many liars that try and pull this stuff off, and it's just a facade. You know, there's some people that they actually have to wear glasses because they have a problem with their vision. So I think it's very disrespectful whenever someone wears glasses just to try and look a certain part in society and to make it look like they're smarter than they really are, whereas there are people that actually have astigmatism in their eye or both eyes, or they have an issue, or maybe they got injured in a car wreck or something like that. Like, you know, most people have a legitimate reason for doing what they do. These other people that are deceitful, they are just that. They are deceitful. So just be aware of that, because it gets really old, and I think it shows you who someone really is when they're living a lie. And you see, like, what is the nature of their heart. And it's probably not founded on the goodness of God, for sure, if they're being a liar and being deceitful. But anyway, let's move on to this particular podcast. So this particular episode, we are discussing the National Nurses United. This might sound familiar, but we have not done this one. We have discussed a different one in times past, but it's not the same. So this is a labor union and or trade union that was founded in 2009. Their headquarters are in Oakland, California. They have one location, and it's just in the United States. So thank goodness for that they are not an international labor union per se, but they are kind of funky. It kind of makes me, it doesn't, how to describe this? It's not that it makes me nervous. It's just that they're socialist. They're borderline fascist, and they think that they own our healthcare industry, because some of these nurses, they don't respect doctors at all. They think that they are the doctor, but yet they've never been to medical school, and then they want to take over the entire healthcare industry within the United States. And they want to take it over in the private sector and in the public sector, and they want to directly impact and control the legislation at a federal and state level. So these people are very much, most of them women, they're just these little dictators. I mean, they're like little Stalin worshipers. I mean, it's disturbing to me what these people do, because they're not about freedom. They are about their career, getting paid, getting overpaid, and then taking over other people's health care and then limiting it. That is very cruel and inhumane, but yet they make it seem like everything they do is for the patient. It's not. It's for themselves. So just be aware of that. So far, they have 150,000 members. The key people are Bonnie Castillo. She is the executive director. And then you have Deborah Berger, Zenai, however you pronounce that name, Cortez. And then Jean Ross. I guess these are the different presidents or something. And this labor union is associated. It does have affiliations with the AFL-CIO. I'm not surprised, but at the same time I am. I'm surprised the AFL-CIO would be affiliated with such a radical labor union like this that is not for the patient, because whenever you have an industry such as the nurses union, that they're not really for the patient's health care and well-being, that puts the patient at risk. So I'm kind of surprised the AFL-CIO would be affiliated with an organization that is not exactly and completely humane. So that concerns me with that, because for the most part, the AFL-CIO, most of the time they are for people and they are for the safety of the industry. But in this case, they're not. So that really disturbs me with that. At the same time, the AFL-CIO, it is one that specializes in promoting and showing favoritism to labor unions, which I think is a problem, because labor belongs to the entire United States, at least to the citizens of the United States. If you're here illegally, you don't deserve a job. You shouldn't have a job here because you're here illegally. And I don't mean that harshly. It's just that you're not an American citizen. So become an American citizen the legal way, not illegally. But then again, if you're here already illegally, more than likely you are already doing other things illegally anyway. So it's one of those things that the AFL-CIO, there are things I like about it, things I don't like about it, and there are some things that very much disappoint me in regards to this. So in regards to the National Nurses United, abbreviated NNU, it is the largest organization of registered nurses in the United States. So again, I'm glad it's not a conglomerate that goes like to the UK and things like that, because the UK and Australia and New Zealand as well, they have a lot of issues with subpar healthcare because they put a lot of responsibility on nurses who are not, they're not doctors, they're not educated. So the reason why socialized medicine does this is so that the people of those countries do not get the best healthcare, which would be to go see a doctor, because they're trying to limit resources. So that's the danger of that. It says the National Nurses United, with more than 175,000 members across the country, I think this fluctuates between 150,000 and 175,000, is the most far-reaching union and professional association of registered nurses in the United States. That I can easily see as being true because they have formed a conglomerate, almost like a monopoly, which technically monopolies are supposed to be illegal. But unfortunately, within labor unions and trade unions, they get away with it because they get affiliated with the AFL-CIO, and I guess within labor unions or trade unions, they're given permission to form monopolies, even though in the private sector you're not allowed to do that, but yet these people work predominantly in the private sector, so that's why it should be illegal in terms of their conglomerates and their monopolies. It says founded in 2009 through the merging of the California Nurses Association and the National Nurses Organizing Committee. So here's the thing, they've got a committee, but it's for organizing nurses nationally. It's not to help patients nationally. It's to help themselves. So that's why there's a problem there. There's a disconnect between basically ethics and morals with this. But then again, I'm not giving them an excuse, but they also don't take the Hippocratic Oath because they're not doctors. So that's why they get away with a lot of stuff. So again, founded in 2009, merging of the California Nurses Association, the National Nurses Organizing Committee, the United American Nurses, and the Massachusetts Nurses Association. The NNU focuses on amplifying the voice of direct care RNs and patients in national policy. They are not for patients. They are not for patients. If they were for patients, they would help patients get in to see their doctors. That would impress me if they did that, but they do not do that. Nurses typically get in the way of the patient's health care. The union's policy positions include the enactment of safe nurse-to-patient ratios. I agree with that. It's almost like classrooms, like between teachers and students. Also, there's patient advocacy rights at the executive and state level. They don't really care about the patient. If they did, they wouldn't interfere with our health care. And legislation, here's the kicker, for single-payer health care to secure, quote, this is BS, quality health care for all, that's not true, it's a lie, as a human right. Okay, here's the thing. Healthcare is not a right, it's a service that you purchase. So healthcare is one of those things that there's so many moving parts. Do you have the right to go to a hospital and get healthcare? Yes. But let me say this, if you are a combative or very aggressive patient, the hospital has every right to kick you out. That's the thing. See, people don't understand that healthcare is not a right. Before Obamacare passed, healthcare was not in our Constitution because your healthcare was individualized, not socialized or singleized. It was individualized based on you, what the patient, what you want, what you need, what you desire. So, it's one of those things that it was between you and your doctor. But the more the federal government and the state government and different groups like this, whenever they get more and more involved in something, they ruin it. And they try and centralize it on the false hopes and the lies that they're trying to make it better, but they're not making it better. Because I remember when Obamacare passed, it was absolute hell, especially here in Oklahoma. It made a lot of things illegal that should not have been made illegal. It's healthcare. Like, it's just something that you purchase. I mean, that's between you and the doctor. That's between you and the healthcare facility. That's between you and the hospital. Like, it's patient-centered, not government-centered, or centered, not nurse-centered, not doctor-centered. It's patient-centered, meaning you, the patient, have complete control over your healthcare. But the more people you get involved in this, in trying to manage and control your healthcare and your health insurance, the less rights you have, not only as a citizen of the United States of America, but also as a patient. That's the problem with this. So just be aware of that. It says the organization's goal is to, quote, organize all direct care RNs into a single organization, oh, that's terrible, capable of exercising influence, again, horrible, over the healthcare industry. That's their goal. They're little Nazis, Stalin worshippers, they're little Stalin worshippers, they're little dictators. Exercising influence over the healthcare industry, governments, and employers. Who are they to exercise influence over anyone? They need to be put in their place. This is getting ridiculous. Like, I kid you not, I can't tell you how many times I've gone to go see my doctor, like an MD or a DO. Like, I've established patient care with a physician. It is nothing new. I go in to see the doctor and I get shuffled around over to a nurse practitioner whom I've never met, and they walk in and act like they own the appointment. I'm like thinking, okay, the appointment belongs to me, the patient. So this nurse practitioner, they try and play doctor, but then they can't answer basic medical questions. They don't have a clue about the medicines that they're prescribing. But yet they want the high paycheck. Like these nurses, they want to be paid well over $100,000 a year. So it's about money. But here's the thing. They don't have the education. They don't have the license to do this stuff. And they should not have the prescribing rights. It's really disturbing. Like, they love the power and the authority. Who doesn't, right? But they don't have the background or the education or the authority to have that authority. But yet, our healthcare system has slowly over the years been giving them more and more power. And it's like, look, I'm not against people wanting to make a lot of money. I think that's great. I wish everybody was a millionaire or a billionaire. I think that would be great. But you need to earn money that is appropriate for what you're doing and not be sabotaging other people's careers, or even worse, be sabotaging the patient's health care or limiting it. See, here's the thing. These nurse organizations, they want to force everybody onto a single-payer system. Well, who are they to decide that? I don't know them. They're not my boss. And their voting rights are not more important than anybody else's. Like, we're equals in the United States. But unfortunately, organizations like this act like their opinion and their thoughts and what they say and do are more important than what the rest of us do, because these people act like elitists. That's why I call them little Stalin worshippers. Because Stalin, he was a very evil, wicked dictator, but he was an elitist. He was a military elitist that was quite horrible to people. And here's the thing. He made all these promises to his people. Food, water, shelter, health care, abundance. All he did was take it away and put it under basically a single-payer system. And you know what? There was massive amounts of starvation. He killed millions of his people. And sometimes brutally. But a lot of them died from starvation. because they did not get access to food, water, and shelter like what he promised, even though they basically handed over all that stuff to him on the promise that, oh, your government is going to care about you. And I do believe there were some people in the Soviet Union that doubted him, but what could they do? Because he was so big and powerful, they couldn't really stand up to him. So, this is one of those things that God bless the United States, that every single one of us has a voice. But here's the thing. When you put organizations like this in charge, they steal your voice. Like the bigger they get, the louder they get, and the bigger and louder they get, the more they make it seem like your voice doesn't matter, because they want to claim that, oh, we care about you, other people don't. Let us take care of you. Well, we can take care of ourselves, we the American people. And if we can't take care of ourselves, we decide who we do business with. And we decide who we see for a physician or a test or a hospital or whatever the case may be. Not some labor union or trade union or some industry that just wants to control other people's lives. See, that's the problem with this organization. They want to control and manipulate not only people's health care, but the entire industry. And they're doing this via the Democratic Party. And see, I feel really sorry for the Democratic Party, because the Democratic Party used to not be like this. I mean, it's always had its issues, but it's never had this many control freaks, because they are extremely progressive. And they do it all in the name of, oh, we care or I care. Well, why don't you care about yourself, and we will care about ourselves? Because that's equality, that's respect. These people do not believe in equality. They believe that they are at the top, everybody else is at the bottom, and they hate doctors because they want their money and they want the prestige, they want the lab coat. I mean, they're already wearing stethoscopes, acting like they're a doctor. I mean, yes, they do need a stethoscope to hear the patient's heart, but they're not the doctor, they're not the surgeon, but yet they try and act like it. I knew, years ago, whenever nurses started dressing like doctors in ERs and in doctors' offices, and they started wearing stethoscopes and scrubs, they were going to want more money. They were going to want to get paid the same as a medical professional, as an MD or DO. Sure enough, that's what's been happening. So, just FYI, be aware of that. In terms of their leadership, it says the executive director of the national organization, which is affiliated with the AFL-CIO, is labor leader Bonnie Castillo, who also heads the 90,000-member California Nurses Association, not surprising. The former executive director is Roseanne DeMauro, who serves as national vice president and executive board member of the AFL-CIO. See, that's favoritism. I don't think she should be allowed to do that. I don't think you should be able to serve on multiple boards like that. This is why there's a problem with the AFL-CIO. This is why they show favoritism and have problems with nepotism. It's because of this. There's a conflict of interest. I'm not surprised that this is happening in this nurses' union, because nurses have a conflict of interest all the time. And they get away with it time and time again. And people need to start calling them out on this, because this is affecting our healthcare industry. And also what people don't realize is the more you overpay underqualified people to do work, the higher rate of inflation will occur within your country that directly impacts your currency and your interest rates. So just be aware of that. I know it's probably going to sound harsh, but it's not meant to be harsh, it's the truth. Because on this show, we call a spade a spade. We don't hide the truth, we don't skirt the truth, we say it like it is, and what these people are doing is wrong. If we know that favoritism and nepotism is wrong, then what these people are doing is absolutely wrong. And it's possibly fraud, but for sure, there is a conflict of interest. In terms of activities, they strongly believe in the single-payer healthcare system. Why am I not surprised? Oh, and here's another thing. I find this kind of laughable. So, the nurses union, they're all for the single-payer system, but yet nurses are notorious for not going to the doctor. So why would you take their advice about healthcare? Just be aware of that. So it says the organization backs a Medicare for all single-payer healthcare plan, for the United States. I am not a fan of that at all. Medicare is a broken system. They don't even take care of our elderly very well. Why would we overload it with everybody's healthcare? I mean, the government can't even take care of the elderly, women, infant, children, our veterans. Like, why would we dump more people into that broken system? It makes no sense to me. It's stupid. It says to support a single-payer system, the NNU leadership mobilized large-scale demonstrations demanding single-payer healthcare be included in the platform at the 2016 Democratic National Convention. So, needless to say, not very many Republicans are for this, or even libertarians are for this, because they know this will bankrupt the country, and they know it is a flawed system. It doesn't work. It's not even working now. So, here's the thing. If you have a stock and it's not doing very well, why would you invest more money? Why would you invest more of your hard-earned money into something that's already failing, is not sustaining itself, not making you any money, and is tanking in your system? Like, why would you invest in that? That's what these nurses want to do. They're so desperate for control and manipulation, they are willing to forfeit people's health care, all for the sake of having a title and for money and for control. It's really disturbing, because that's not the American way. Even John F. Kennedy would not be for this. Not like this. Because even John F. Kennedy knew that without capitalism, you don't have a country. You don't. You don't have an economy. You don't have places of business. You don't have healthy labor. It's just one of those things. And yes, he was a Democrat, and yes, there were some social welfare programs. Let me get a drink of water. Welfare programs that he wanted to do, but I think even he knew that some of this stuff, it could only go so far before you break the bank. Drink of water, love it. Okay, so moving on. Talking about Occupy Wall Street, why am I not surprised these nurses do this? So here's the thing, nurses love money. They are very greedy. So I'm not surprised that they occupied Wall Street. So here's what's interesting is they shame and blame bankers and Wall Street, but yet look at the greed that takes place within their occupation and within their labor unions and trade unions. Look at what they're trying to do. They're trying to force people onto a single-payer system that doesn't work, that is broke, that doesn't pay for itself. And yet they want to make well over $100,000 a year, each of them, minimum. But yet they're shaming and blaming stockbrokers, Wall Street bankers for them wanting to make money. I'm like, wow, that's calling the kettle black. Congratulations. So it says National Nurses United, has held numerous protests, including one in front of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and another on Wall Street, to protest, get this, privatization and profiteering in the healthcare industry. Really? Well, if they're really against privatizing and if they're really against profiteering, then why are they wanting to get paid so much money? Why are they wanting to be treated equivalent to doctors? See, they're hypocrites. They love money. They love the prestige. They love the title. Like, they love all those letters that go after their name on a business card. That is ego. They are not for people. They are not for the patient. They are for themselves, big time. Like, if I actually thought the nurses union and that nurses, were all on the up and up, I would totally be for them. But the fact that they're causing problems like this and the fact that they're hypocrites, it's a big issue. It's not right what they're doing, because, again, they're just trying to steal and conceal. Like, they're trying to get all this money for pay, but yet they don't want us to realize, hey, the single-payer system actually really sucks. And they want to be in charge of our healthcare industry. They don't think the patient should be in charge of their healthcare. Let me give you an example. Let's say you're for a single-payer system. Okay, so let's say you went to a doctor's appointment, or let me word it this way. Have you ever been to a doctor's appointment and the visit did not go well? Maybe the front desk was awful. Maybe the doctor wasn't on time. Maybe they were rude. Maybe the nurse was a total witch. I could use a totally different word. Or maybe they wouldn't return your call. They wouldn't give you access to your medical records. They wouldn't tell you what your lab work was. They didn't want to release your medical records to go to a different doctor so that you could get appropriate care. I'm thinking about all these situations that I've heard of and things that have actually happened to me as well. That's already taking place, right? So here's the thing. I'm not saying that happens every day, but here's the thing. whenever things like that happen, you, the patient, are in control of that. Like, you can actually report them for stuff that they're doing that's not right, that's not legal or ethical, or if you don't like what they're doing, you can go to another doctor's office. You have that right. You have that freedom. Under a single payer system, all of that freedom goes away. All of the reporting bad stuff goes away because you're putting one central agency in charge of everything, which would be our federal government. You know, they can't even handle the DMV. I mean, here's the thing. They can't even handle other stuff. So why would you put them in charge of something as important as your health care? Something as important as your life? See, the single payer system is subpar healthcare. It's not the cream of the crop. But here's the thing. If anything bad happens to you in socialized medicine or in the single payer system, I'm sorry to say this, you're screwed. You're absolutely screwed. Even though you're paying for the healthcare, you have no way of really fighting for yourself to get what you want or what you need. And that's what's been happening in the UK, Australia, and New Zealand for years. That's why a lot of these foreigners, especially from these European countries, whenever they have socialized medicine, one of the number one reasons why they come to the United States or they have to go to another country to get medical care is because their government, their centralized healthcare system that is managed by their government, tells them no. Even though they have paid for it via their tax dollars, they're being denied healthcare that they've already paid for. Hence, the problem with the single-payer healthcare system. Also, unfortunately, with this nurses' union, it says they support a tax on financial transactions. Why am I not surprised? Which the organization says could raise at least $350 billion a year. Wow, they love money. And they already know the numbers. See, that shows you their greed. Oh, well, let's just tax a bunch of people. Let's just tax everything to get what we want. Hey, I have an idea. Why don't you, instead of taxing more people, why don't you just voluntarily give more of your own money to the federal government? Leave our health care alone. We want it privatized. We want capitalism because we know there is freedom in that. But if you give everything to the government, you're screwed. Absolutely screwed. Like you're not going to get 5-star health care on a 1-star budget. You're just not. It's just not going to happen. Moving on, this organization very much supported and donated a lot of money to Bernie Sanders when he was running for president. So just look at the craziness of Bernie Sanders. I mean, every once in a while he has a really good policy that I actually agree with, but for the most part, most of his stuff is so weird and so communist driven. I'm like, why does anybody vote for him? It's so bizarre. He does not believe in the United States of America. He does not like the United States. He doesn't believe in the United States. He doesn't believe in capitalism. He doesn't believe in a strong currency. He doesn't believe in workers' rights in regards to that it applies to everybody equally, which includes the workers and the employer. It also includes the owners and the higher-ups. It also includes the executives. But he just shames and blames everything. He also thinks that healthcare should be free. It's not free. Our tax dollars pay for it. We're on the hook for all that. It's not right to make someone pay for something that is not their responsibility. He also thinks that everybody should be able to go to school for free, like to university. Really? Have you seen how much universities, even public universities, charge for schooling? It's ridiculous. They overcharge students because most of our universities, unfortunately, in the United States, are being run by Democrats, by socials, by socialists or liberals or whatever, by very much progressives. They love money. And guess what? They know how to spend it, but they don't know how to earn it. That's the problem. They're takers, they're not givers. They're takers, they're not workers. They're lazy. I mean, I guess the only thing that they're really good at is complaining and spending other people's money. Because there definitely is a problem with greed. And I'll give an example. Bernie Sanders' wife, if I remember correctly, I think she was president of a university, and she totally ran it into the ground financially. I mean, what does that say about what kind of head she has on her shoulders in terms of management? Well, it's the very same thing as Bernie Sanders. He does not understand, well, I was going to say diplomacy, but also he does not understand democracy. He does not understand capitalism. He does not understand supply and demand. I mean, he's just an extremist in terms of, I'd say, socialism, communism. I don't think he's a fascist. I don't think he's that. But he very much is a communist. And I just think, that's so sad because he actually has some really good ideas. I really do think he has some great ideas. But the fact that he's so extreme and it's so disturbing, some of the stuff that he wants to do in the United States, it just kind of derails any of the normal stuff, and it derails and kind of, sadly, just his good ideas get lost in his craziness. I mean, that's the sad thing, is that he actually has some really good points in his favor, and he actually knows a lot of stuff. But you see, here's the thing, whenever someone is so driven by a false agenda and by a false ideology, a false doctrine, it doesn't matter how good their idea is, it's always twisted, and that's the problem. That's the problem with Bernie Sanders and others like him. A lot of these liberals and progressives, like, what's it called, is it AOC, that chick's name that's not even really educated, like she worked as a waitress and then got elected to public office or something. And I'm not against waitresses, but she's a moron. And she was totally backed by this really rich guy. Was it, for some reason, the name George Soros comes to mind? I'm trying to remember. I will research that. But, she was totally being fed what to say. And who knows if the glasses she wears are even real. I mean, she comes across as someone that just wears stuff just to have a facade and to make it seem like she's educated when she's not. So it's just one of those things, like, you have to be careful who you elect to office. And I think people have been very stupid to elect her. And then there was this other chick that was elected. She's a really hateful Muslim chick. And not all Muslims are hateful, but this chick, she definitely has an agenda against the United States. And it's one of those things that's just like Bernie Sanders. They can have a great idea, but their idea means nothing because of their agenda and their false ideology that they believe in and their false doctrine that is anti-America, anti-United States, anti-democracy, anti-capitalism. Pretty much anything and everything they say and do is tainted by a false and very corrupt ideology. It's really quite horrible. It's almost like a false doctrine within a church. Like, you have to be careful what you practice in terms of, first of all, your faith, of course, but also, what you believe in terms of a political stance. So, because it's very important because it affects everything. And I think that when you hold an office, it's even more important because you want to lead your people towards freedom, not tyranny. And those three people that I just mentioned, they very much are tyrannical. They are not for freedoms of the United States. They make it seem like they are for freedoms, but they're really not. The way that they fool people into thinking that they are for freedoms of the United States is they pinpoint, trigger issues, things that really piss people off, and they get people, kind of wound up. And, people tend to think, yes, this irritates me and this person is speaking to my heart about, they must be right on everything. That's not true. Like, there are some Republicans I don't agree with on certain things. I mean, like, there are things I don't agree with, with Mitt Romney. I don't think he would have been the best Republican president, but he unfortunately was the one that our party chose to run, and there's a reason why he failed. But just FYI, be aware that sometimes people within your own party, sometimes they can very much not be for what you think they are for because they have ulterior motives, and it's because of the false doctrine that they believe in. And also in regards to that AOC chick, she's just being fed material from some information machine. I mean, really, like, whoever is funding her is feeding her all this information, because you can't tell me she actually knows all this stuff and is prepared. I mean, it's just one of those things, like, I'm not falling for it and I'm 38 years old. Like, I can tell she's a ding-a-ling and a flake. And it's very unfortunate whenever I think people vote for someone like that, because it doesn't look good for the United States. And I'm not against younger people being elected. I think if you are of legal age and you are an American citizen, then you have every right to run. But I just think people should be careful who they vote for, because who you vote for represents you, and it also represents your country. And plus, sometimes those people, yes, they can do a lot of good, but sometimes they can also do a lot of damage. And unfortunately, whenever they do a lot of damage in regards to policies, I have hiccups, policies, rules, laws, and legislations, unfortunately, the damage that they do can last for years. And I mean like years, like decades. So we want to make sure that we don't go backwards in our policies and that we always move forward. But being that we want to always move forward, that doesn't mean that we go on the progressive route per se. Because one thing I've noticed with progressives is that they're not really for human rights. They're not really for protecting the family. They don't believe in protecting children because they don't believe in protecting the unborn. They don't care to protect children and infants, obviously the unborn. They think that a woman should be able to do whatever she wants to her body no matter what. And it's like, well, that's only to a certain extent. When she's pregnant, she has a responsibility to protect that child because that's a human being. What I find interesting, and I'll close with this, what I find interesting about feminists is that they claim that it's just a blob of cells. When they're feminists, they're single and they're sleeping around, but then once they get married, oh, now it's a baby, it's a child, now we want it. It's like, really, so now it's a human. But back when you were single and sleeping around and getting pregnant, it's just a blob of cells, it doesn't feel anything, dismember it, suck it out, send it down a drain, I don't care, it's just cells. It's no different than cutting off your cuticles. It is completely different than that. It is very much a human being. And it has every right to be born. So, my thing with that is that I think the only reason why, or the only ethical reason why a woman should get an abortion is if her life is in danger, which is like less than 1%. There are so many women that claim, oh, it endangered my life. Really, is that because it was endangering your career and you consider your career to be your life? Like, it's so interesting the way that sometimes these feminists, or just women in general sometimes, because sometimes there are even conservative Bible Belt women that will get abortions. I'm like, wow, you obviously are not a Christian if you're going out and getting abortions like that. Like, that's inhumane. Like, God's not for killing his children, so why are you doing it, right? But you'd be surprised how many women, they justify what they do. And I just think it's very disappointing, because I think it looks bad on women. It looks bad on our country. It looks bad on women. And I just wonder, to me it's very hypocritical for the progressive left to be for universal health care, but yet that doesn't apply to the unborn. Like, health care doesn't apply to the unborn. So basically, babies can be executed, done away with, even up until 9 months, even after they're born, even outside the womb. They can be gotten rid of. So if there's universal health care, and if health care applies to everybody as a human right, then how come that human right does not apply to children? It doesn't apply to infants. It does not apply to babies. It does not apply to what is growing in the womb of a woman. See, that's the hypocrisy and the lies of the liberal left and the progressive left. They really don't value human life like what you think. But yet they want access to your vote. They want access to your money. They want to control your health care just so they can limit it and control it. Another thing that doesn't make sense to me in regards to the progressive left is that they claim that they want universal health care, and they claim about all life, and they want universal daycare or whatever. I'm like, really? Well, what's the point of having universal daycare if you're also for abortion? Because if you're aborting children, then why would you need daycare? Because technically, if you abort a child, then they're dead, like they're gone. So if they're not here on this earth anymore, then why would you need daycare centers? See, that's the hypocrisy of the Democratic Party and the progressives. I don't think that represents the moderates. I know it doesn't represent Republicans per se, or libertarians. But, it's one of those things that's the hypocrisy of these policies. They claim to value human rights and the dignity of the person, but then they choose within their mind and their elitist mentality, they're going to decide who lives and who dies. That is eugenics. Eugenics is very evil, very horrible, very hateful. It's a very cruel way to treat someone. And if you need an example of eugenics, look up the Holocaust. Look up what happened to Jews, gypsies, homosexuals, the mentally retarded, the mentally disabled, the mentally insane, and things of that nature. Those people were, some of them were sterilized and then released out into society, and then others, they were and or sterilized and sent to concentration camps. So that's eugenics. So needless to say, the liberal left is very much for eugenics in that they do not respect human life equally. Like they don't believe in equality. They say they believe in equality, but they don't actually think equality applies to everybody. It just applies to them. But even so, they think they are above you and me. They think they're above everybody else because they think in a very elitist mindset. But here's the thing, a lot of these elitists, a lot of them are not educated. I mean, just look at Hollywood. I mean, how many of those people in Hollywood are actual scientists, doctors, lawyers, engineers, architects? Like, how many of them are actually educated? I mean, anybody can have a 4-year degree, and I'm not dissing that. I have a 4-year degree, but I know that I don't have my master's. I don't have a PhD. So I don't have that elitist mindset. That doesn't mean that I'm ignorant or stupid or, those things, but it's just one of those things that, when you have people that think they're better than you, that's a character flaw. And that character flaw tends to be very rampant in the Democratic Party, especially when it comes to socialism, communism, single payer system, universal health care, socialized medicine, and abortion, wanting to limit like our natural resources, like how much we use of it, which greatly causes inflation. It raises the price of everything. I mean, there's just all these lies and deception. Like they make it seem like they care about people, but really it's just about punishing people. Why? For the sake of control. For the sake of, we're going to pass a policy, because we care about people. Well, if you really care about people, then why are you limiting anything like this? Like, why are you doing these things? It's really weird to me. So just FYI, be aware that whenever someone makes a promise to take care of you, a big red flag needs to go up in your head, in your brain, because you are responsible for you. Please be aware of that. The majority of the population can take care of themselves. Of course, we have those that are elderly, or maybe they're sick. They are way fewer than the majority of the population, but even the elderly are very independent. I mean, there's just this mindset, if you've reached a certain age, you're an old hag or you're an old man, you're incompetent, we should just lock you away in nursing homes or healthcare facilities. And it's just like, no, like that's not right. And we actually saw that happen during COVID-19. FYI, we had that happen here in Oklahoma, and it really pissed off a lot of people. Excuse my language. There were so many nursing homes, assisted living facilities, that they were on lockdown. Those people were not allowed to leave the facility, even though they had every right to leave. Well, the facility acted like a little military. The people that worked there, which were nurses and medical aides, they locked those people in during COVID-19, like they couldn't even go outside or anything. And guess what? A lot of elderly people died in these nursing homes and assisted living facilities because of this. And here's the thing. It was predominantly the nurses and the medical aides that were getting those people sick with COVID-19 because they were going from room to room, not knowing they were infecting these people, because the nurses and the medical aides, they could leave the building and go home to their families. But yet they were bringing that disease in to the very facility that these people were being locked down into. That is what single-payer healthcare looks like. That is what universal healthcare looks like, because that is what happened. The government or somebody else taking control over your healthcare, so then they give themselves permission to take complete control over you. That's against the law. It's against the law at a state and federal level. And they do it in the name of we care. Oh, we're just trying to protect you. Really? Then how come you're the one that basically brought in, the disease itself? I mean, it almost reminds me of whenever an army would be attacking another army, like back in European days, like back in the 1300s and 1400s, and if ever they really wanted to wipe out the enemy really quick, they would just get blankets or dead corpses of smallpox or whatever, of people that died from smallpox, and they would catapult it over into the enemy's camp and just wait till smallpox ran its course and just annihilate the enemy army. That's basically what happened in our nursing homes and our assisted living facilities. And all in the name of, we care about your rights. They do not and did not care. So don't fall for it. Do not fall for it. So my personal opinion is that if you're listening to this and you're older and you're thinking about going into assisted living, don't do it. Or you're thinking about going into a nursing home, if you can live on your own independently, just stay in your house, stay in your apartment, live in your townhome or whatever, live on your houseboat. I don't care. Stay away from those facilities. Don't go there unless you absolutely have to. And even then, you can hire people to come into your home and give you those treatments or whatever you need. You don't necessarily have to go to them. They can come to you. And you can hire them and you can fire them. That's up to you. Because you, the patient, have complete control over your health care. But the moment you give someone else control over your life, your health care, your finances, your property, you've lost it. And it's very difficult to get it back. That's why freedom is so important. That's why you don't give someone your freedom. You treasure it and you protect it. I will go ahead and end this podcast, but as usual, until next time, I pray that you're happy, healthy, and whole, that you have a wonderful day and a wonderful week. Thank you so much. God bless. Bye-bye.